that this and welcome to this side event on the occasion of the United Nations Ocean Conference hosted here in Lisbon. This side event is co-organized by the European Maritime Safety Agency and by the European Space Agency. I am Manuela Tomassini. I'm the head of Department for Sustainability and Technical Assistance here at EMSA. And today, together with Rita Rinaldo, the head of Projects and Studies Implementation Division at ESA, will be your hosts for this event. We are going to focus on space technologies and innovation at the service, of course, of the green transition of maritime transport. Today, we have gathered representatives from the maritime administrations, from the industry, and from the academia to showcase and explore opportunities to monitor and reduce marine pollution and, of course, in support of decarbonization of the maritime sector. Without further ado, we will leave the floor to Maja Markovčić-Kostelac, the Executive Director of EMSA, and to Elodie Viau, as a Director of Telecommunications and Integrated Applications, for their introductory remarks. Maja, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to EMSA. Welcome to the House of the European Maritime Affairs. I would like to thank our colleagues from ESA. It's just one word that divides us. Elodie Viau for the cooperation and for joint efforts to gather you today here and to discuss in the framework of the Ocean Conference how space technology can facilitate the green transformation of maritime transport sector, and how can we, as the two European entities, work together even stronger to make it happen. Well, space and oceans just seems to be very distant. But as a matter of fact, there is a very strong relationship between our sky and our oceans. Climate-wise, pollution-wise, safety-wise, security. They are in the strong hug. And we all know that if you want to see better, you have to climb. if you really want to see better, you have to climb even more, up to the sky. Sky, or the view from the sky, provide us the monitoring tools, provide us the visibility for what is really going on in the maritime domain, to learn more, to be more efficient in acting. After all, for centuries, people were looking at the oceans, seeing the eternity, endless space. Now, that's the same feeling we have when we look in the sky. Maybe our scientists in 100 years will tell us something different. But what they are telling us now is that we have a problem. Our oceans are at stake. And with our oceans at stake, we, as the human beings, we are at stake. We all know oceans covers more than 70% of our Earth's surface. For each 1 kilometer of land, you have almost 2.5 kilometers of oceans. Oceans absorbs the majority of the sun, heat the ground, heat the Earth. With its currents, with the exchange, it provides us with the oxygen to breathe, it provides us with the food, it provides us with a mean of transportation exchange. So it is of the vital importance. That's why the SDGs, and in particular in our context SDG 14, is so important. It is the strategic objective where we finally agree what we want to achieve. Now it's up to all of us to discuss, and this is one of the most valuable, I would say, expecting achievement of this ocean conference, to see how we can translate it into the real practical actions which has to happen today, and which has to bring all of us together on the stage. When it comes to maritime transport, and this is our field of work, we all know that it is absolutely important and vital for the global economies, for both developed and developing states, for distant island communities. It's a blood circulation of our globalized and interconnected world. Maritime transport is something that brings our food to our tables. It was very obvious during the recent pandemic crisis. It is now obvious in the context of Ukraine crisis. Nevertheless, and irrespective of the fact that it is one of the, let's say, most environmentally friendly mode of transport, it has its footprint, environmental footprint. We have shown that in the last year's published European Environmental Maritime Transport Report, ENTER report, which we have developed in close cooperation with another European agency, the Environmental Agency. What we have learned from there? We have seen that, for example, when it comes to the climate change and the CO2 emissions, the international transport calling at EU ports, ships over 5,000 GT, in 2018 have emitted around 147 million tons of CO2. 145 to be precise. A year later, it was 147 million. In 2020, it was 128 million tons. That would be a good news if it is not the result of the relative reduction of transport in the first 3 months of 2020. So it will be interesting to see what will be the trend in 2021 and 2022. I'm afraid that unfortunately we will still not show the results that will give us the reasons for the optimism. Because as we all know, to reach the sustainable or climate targets relating to the decarbonization in 2050 and reduction of CO2 emissions by 55% by 2030, we need technology. We need new technologies that will enable powering of the ships with non-fossil fuels. But even now, When it comes to the environmental footprint and the reduction of the CO2 emissions for international shipping, we can rely on the cooperation with the space technology to provide us with the optimization solutions, with the operational solutions, which could contribute to the serious reduction of the CO2 emissions and greenhouse gas emissions in total. Port optimization, for example, we were discussing recently with ESA as one potential area where we can further explore the possibility to cooperate and to facilitate both port and shipping sector to reduce their target, to reduce their emissions in the future. But it's not all about the CO2 emissions. If we talk about the pollution, the air pollution, for example, SOx emissions have decreased, but it has decreased mostly in the areas where there is a designated SOx control zones, or like in Baltic or North Sea. So we are very much welcoming the designation of one of the most busiest part of the European seas, the Med, as the SOx control area. Here again, monitoring from the space using the space technology is something that provides us a knowledge to be able to make proper decisions. There are other areas in which we have already explored how efficient we are if we use more space technology. For example, oil pollution. It is already a decade since we are using the space technology to monitor the oil pollution on the surface of our oceans. It's a CleanSeaNet that's a very well-known, at least in the maritime circles, very well-known tool that we are developing and using here in the agency for the benefits of our member states and the wider communities. CleanSeaNet provides us the early identification of oil spills at the surface of the oceans, and by sharing this information and combining it with the traffic monitoring information, we can identify, or the competent authorities of the member states can identify the polluters, but it also has this preventive, let's say, image, because everybody knows that we can identify the polluter, everybody knows that the pollution can be identified early enough. So that brings also to the reduction of the operational pollution significantly in the European waters, but globally as well. There are other areas like marine litter pollution, particularly plastic, or the underwater noise, which has been increased in last 5 years significantly, more than doubled in the European sea areas. This is also one area where we expect the possibility to use the technology, including space technology, even more. Monitoring and surveillance, which is vital for maritime safety, is one of the areas where we are extensively using space technology. It is a vital part of our integrated maritime picture, both through the Copernicus Maritime Services, where we are entrusted to host the maritime surveillance as the Copernicus service, and which enables us to complement and make the integrated maritime picture rich enough in the real time to enable the action and reaction, so to prevent the maritime casualties in the marine domain, but also to react when something has happened, whether it is search and rescue, whether it is security threats, or any other. So I see the potential of our further usage of the space technology, which is fast developing, and we see the potential in assisting us in turning this knowledge development into the operational practice. This is where the synergy between our two agencies, as I said, it's only one S that divides ESA from EMSA. We see the potential for us to use the knowledge and technology development projects which they are developing to translate it into the concrete operational practice, which we then share with our member states in their daily operation, through which they are far more efficient and effective in preventing our oceans for further deterioration and to achieve, let's say, the targets of the greening transformation of maritime transport. With that in mind, I'm really very eager to learn more on ongoing projects in the maritime domain and in the space development of space technology to exchange the best practices. This is how we learn more. This is how we get the new brilliant ideas for the actions that will take together for the benefit of the implementation and the concretization of the SDG goals in the years to come. Thank you. I'm looking forward to our active discussion during this afternoon.
Thank you, Maya, Executive Director of EMSA, for this introduction. And now I would like to give the floor to Elodie Viau, Director of Telecommunication and Integrated Application at ESA.
Okay, now it's working. I thought the acoustic was really good, but no, thanks, Maya, again, and thanks to all of you to be present today. I'm very pleased to be with you in sunny Lisbon today, going from one member state to another member state, because it's really important topic today to discuss with you at this UN Ocean Conference. Really, the topic of, as you have mentioned, space and the other industry like the maritime sectors can join forces in order to achieve decarbonization, a green and blue economy together. And that's, in my speech, what I will try to answer to you and give you a few updates of what we have been doing together in the past and how we are already shaping the future together in order in ESA side, as we said, develop the new innovation of space that can be then used and transformed in operation. Thanks to you, thanks to our partners. As you mentioned, we have only one letter of difference, one word of difference, and we are very pleased at the European Space Agency to be present today. So I'm Elodie Viau. I'm the director, as I mentioned, of Telecommunication and Integrated Application at the European Space Agency. Our mission is really to leverage space for our economies, our industries, and our societies. We build fast and secure connectivity for Europe's citizens, entrepreneurs, and governments. So it's really at the heart of what we do to bring the partners together to achieve more together. We integrate space solutions in our system for safety, security, and sustainability. So we are sharing a lot of common goals. The blue economy. We have realized, and I think all of you share this point of view, that sustainable use of our ocean resource is a key piece of our planetary security, economical growth, and green transformation. Maya was showing me the art at the entrance. Our child, our future generation do realize that even from the very early stage by expressing it in their heart. So the utilization of space is vital to the maritime sectors for the last 40 past years. Among the many achievements, I want to remind you that 12 years ago, on board the Columbus module on the International Space Station, the European Space Agency was conducting the COLAIS experiment that demonstrates the feasibility to have receiving an AIS message from space. This has been paving the way of understanding of the maritime transport and dozens of applications with a profound impact on the maritime awareness and sustainability. In my directorate, we have a long history of supporting the maritime sector with sustainable downstream application. At the moment, we have more than 20 applications that are running, which, if we aggregate it together, represent 20 million of innovative and sustainable services addressing the need of various stakeholders in the maritime sectors. But in order to achieve our objective and to maximize the impact, because it's what we want to do, of our program, we are not working at all in isolation. We count on our large network, and you are part of it today. And if you are not there on our network, please join us in this effort. We are engaged with industries because we are working in partnership project with them to facilitate their push for innovation. We are triggering government, national and international end user. So we are going to have very soon our ministerial in November 2022, where we are going to encourage and propose program proposal for the public sectors to invest in space to support the maritime domain. And this is a very key moment where the public financing is coming together to reach the private industry to end-to-end address the challenge of tomorrow, and the maritime sector for secure and sustainable is a key on the agenda. We have since more than 10 years a successful partnership with the European Maritime Safety Agency, and we are initiating this type of project together for the next ministerial in the area of maritime safety and surveillance and also sustainability approach. We have also recently launched partnership projects, that the one with Sintef Ocean, with whom we are exploring the autonomous shipping. We are also, last week I was together with my team in Italy with the Italian Coast Guard, with who we have signed a memorandum of intent to support the emergence of space-enabled maritime systems and services that has three objectives. The first one is a long-term sustainable socio-economical development, so really an economical growth. The second, to improve navigation, safety, because the Coast Guard in Italy, unfortunately, due to the geopolitical crisis, have a lot to do those days with the migration of population. So how do we make the arrival and taking care of those population in a more human and safe way? And then finally, the third topic was about the maritime pollution prevention. Strong from this effort, we are going to put together a task force with them, because these maritime services based on space system will have an interest of a large community, the Coast Guard that I was mentioning, but also the Port Authority for their logistics and using, for example, 5G to optimize the activity within the port and reduce the consumption of fuel and reduce the emission of pollution. Shipping company, commercial operator will have the same need. International and national and European institutions like EMSA are also very eager to work with us in the same perspective. So the challenges are vast, maybe vaster in seas than on land. As you have recalled to everyone, there is more than 70% of our planet that is blue. We are very proud of that, but we need to take care of it. And the transportation medium is for 90% of the world trade. So this means that the maritime sector moves over $25 trillion every year. But it's not about economics here today. We know that the maritime transport is one of the most efficient transportation, as you have mentioned, one of the most efficient transportation method, but is still responsible for 3% of the greenhouse gas emission. And every effort is important. If we are to meet IMO target, we have to halve emission by 2050. The maritime industry must leave no stone unturned. We really need to search each solution, and satellite data, space is there to help you in finding those solutions. So those space solutions are relying on seamless connectivity, on precise navigation, integrating all those data together from satellite, but also on the port capability, on the in-situ data that can be in the ocean, on our land, to really achieve those goals of decarbonization. So for example, I will give you a list of examples of how this space solution can be built, and they can improve the accuracy of positioning and optimizing the port arrival time. They can support the sustainability and the modernization of the port. They can establish space-based services for maritime emission monitoring, so to monitor what are the emissions. They can also monitor the water quality and survey the coastal area. They can monitor the floating maritime plastic, a lot of plastic in the heart of the child, and also the oil spill. And finally, it can also support the planning of the infrastructure with the climate change. I heard from the Coast Guard that the infrastructure that are around the port are at risk. How do we anticipate, how do we plan the reconstruction or the implementation of those infrastructure and decommissioning of those assets that they don't fall into the ocean at the bottom for no reason. So the green transition and the blue economy, as you have well understood by now, and as you are very convinced, I'm sure, have taken a central stage in the formulation of the space strategy. It's inside our strategic agenda of 2025. We have a place that we want to act for decarbonisation. Our Director General has formulated 3 accelerators for the use of space on Earth. One of them is about the green for future, and the maritime sector is one element of it. There is a second one that is about rapid and resilient crisis response. And of course, the safety in the maritime domain is fully fitting in this one as well. OptiPort, 5G MAS, Digital Port Platform, Cache22. This is the name of the project that will be presented today by a representative of the panel. Is that just some project in the list of the 125 projects that the European Space Agency has kicked off in the maritime domain over the last 10 years. I'm keen to hear those projects presented and the stakeholders' interaction in this panel, their perspective and the main challenge that they face in the transition towards the sustainable maritime sectors, as well as the solutions that they have developed so far to tackle it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elodie. And now we are very happy to have with us, even if from far away, Jutta Paulus, member of the European Parliament. Jutta doesn't need any word of introduction with all of us. Her commitment and engagement towards a green future and of course toward greener shipping is known to all of us. And we are very happy that she found the time to be with us and address this audience with a keynote speech. Jutta, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you very much for those very, very kind words, which I honestly do not deserve. I would like to thank also Maya for your clear words and your great examples of how oceans really support our civilization. And coming to the second keynote, it's always fascinating how space technology helps us in so many ways, from navigation to environment to security. And I think it's really great that those two sectors are interconnected in that way, and that we have the opportunity or the possibility to learn from very far away what is going on 70% of the surface of our planet. Actually, our goal is to bridge the gap between the maritime transport sector, which has, let's say, been left off the shelf when it comes to climate policies, and the other sectors, namely also reaching the SDG goals and targets. So I would like to just briefly outline what's going on at policy level in the European Union. I've been working on maritime issues ever since I started my mandate in the European Parliament, because I was declared rapporteur for the revision of the regulation of maritime CO2 emissions from maritime transport. So it's monitoring, reporting, and verification of CO2 emissions from maritime transport. And it's only about monitoring, right? So it's not about reducing. And coming from this MRV regulation, where I managed to broaden the scope a bit, calling for the inclusion of shipping in the ETS, introducing a call for an efficiency target until 2030, and for an obligation to connect to shoreside electricity, I'm now very happy to see that the ETS now really took up shipping. We have a Parliament's position on this, we have a Council position on this, and trilogues probably will be starting after the summer, but we can be sure that shipping will be taken on board at last and will pay its fair share. I'm extremely happy that our original idea, and I'm saying our because there's Catherine Chabot who really deserves credits for this, that there will be an ocean fund, and this ocean fund will be filled with part of the ETS revenues, and with this ocean fund, the decarbonization of the sector shall be brought forward, with a special part of the fund being reserved for biodiversity, because we have heard that our oceans are really endangered, our maritime protected areas are not really in a good state, and we urgently need better funding here, because it's not the issue of a single member state in whose coast areas this marine protected areas lie. We have to make sure the ocean is our common heritage, and we have to protect it together. So I'm very glad that for the very, very first time we have a single fund where ocean, marine life, biodiversity is being supplied with. And thanks again to Catherine, who brought this forward and stood very strong in the negotiations. So now we'll still have to defend it in Council, of course, but I'm pretty sure that our negotiators from Parliament will do a very good job there. So after I had started on this legislation, I, of course, had a lot of exchanges with port authorities, with shipping companies, with ship owners, with shipbuilders, with NGOs. So it was the whole range of stakeholders, I might say. And also I'm pretty well situated in 3 committees in the European Parliament, which is the Environment Committee, the Industry Committee, and the Transport Committee. And all 3 committees are, of course, connected to the shipping sector. And in my function in these committees, I've also been regularly a delegate to the IMO meetings, because the European Parliament has an observatory status there. So we are allowed to take part and to listen and to meet stakeholders, to have side events, so to speak. Of course, due to the pandemic, all has been held online in the last 2 years. But there it's also very interesting to see how our activity at the European regional level affects the discussions at the IMO. And I tend to believe, and I'm being reinforced with this opinion also by the Commission, for example, if we hadn't made the first moves here in Europe, we probably wouldn't have seen movement at the IMO level when it comes to greenhouse gas reduction, also when it comes to pollution, cutting pollution. I'm very glad to have heard that now the Mediterranean will become a SECA area, so that sulfur dioxide will no longer affect people's health and also ocean health in this very, very sensible area. Currently, we have 3 legislative files that are relevant for the maritime sector. MRV, where the Parliament has agreed on its position already nearly 2 years ago, but the Council hasn't found the time to look at our proposal due to all the other things that came up. And maybe we will see it being taken on board by the next president, not the Czech presidency, but the one after that, because Czechs already said, we don't even have a coast, we don't want to talk about it. And I've been getting used to the sentence, we have so much other things on our table, but let's see whether we will be able to close this file during my mandate. Then we have the ETS, as said, which is waiting for interinstitutional negotiations. And there, the approach which has been taken by the Council and also by the Parliament in majority, unfortunately only looks at half of the voyages outside the EU. I would have appreciated very much to have the whole voyage covered. And then you can take half out when the other country, the non-EU country, also has a pricing or taxing or whatever mechanism for their CO2 emissions. Alas, it was not possible, not with the current majorities, but at least I think what's really good about finally including the maritime sector is that now the IMO will have a blueprint and a showcase on how a market-based measure can be deployed. And I would be happy if any other countries worldwide would be ready to join our ETS, because then, of course, they also would become eligible for the Ocean Fund. At least that's as far as I read it. From an industry angle point of view, I think the shipbuilding industry has more or less left Europe, except for some niches, I might say. So the lion's share of ships is built in Asia, as we all know. And I think with this move on greening the sector, on deploying more efficient engines, on deploying wind-assisted propulsion, on deploying a better hull, on being innovative, we could bring back some of this industry back to Europe. But then we have to make sure that we are not offering greenwashed solutions, but that we are offering sustainable solutions in line with the SDG goals, of course, because also consumers are becoming more and more aware that shipping is a major, is responsible for a major part of emissions. So the shipping sector has between 3 and 4%, depending how you calculate, of global greenhouse gas emissions, which is more than any single EU country. And I've already heard someone saying, well, I don't even know how the goods that I'm buying at the store are transported to the EU. Is this being done in a green way? So I think it would be a very good idea to proactively come forward saying, hey, we are looking forward to green shipping. We are committing to green shipping. We are investing in green shipping, and we can promise our customers that our goods will be transported in a climate-friendly way, let's say by the year 2030. So I think this could become also an argument, especially for those who have a Fridays for Future kid at home, because those kids can really be a nuisance. I don't have one myself because my kids are rather old. I already have a grandchild. So, but I know from others that Fridays for Future kids are very, well, let's say, stubborn in their argumentation, and that they put a lot of pressure also on their parents. Where are we right now? We have a 50% chance of keeping the goals and the targets of the Paris Agreement. And I find this rather frightening. The TU Delft has published a study these days showing that the yearly increase in sea levels in the Netherlands has been increasing from, as compared to the 70 years before, has been increasing from 1 millimeter per year to 2.7 millimeters per year. And this might become even quicker the more the Arctic and Antarctic ice shelves are affected by climate change. So especially for those nations that are so dependent also on oceans, they are already now preparing for a sea level rise. But there are a lot of nations which are not able to do so because they lack the financial means. And living in a region which has a huge amount of historic emissions, I think it's our fair share to say we will go ahead, we will pave the way, we will be the trailblazers, and we will invest in green shipping in order to make it affordable for the countries in the global south that cannot afford these technologies right now. We have seen in the past that the maritime sector is slow to act and has to be pushed, and therefore we have seen, for example, that the IMO only came up with a data collection system after EU came forward with MRV. And so we don't only have to be a trailblazer when it comes to technology and innovation, we also have it to be policy-wise. So I'm very glad that we're on a good way there. We are currently negotiating in the Parliament, that's the third proposal, which I forgot, the Fuel EU Maritime regulation, where let's see how it works out, but I would have really love to see more ambition here, because obviously we will not be able to power all our ocean giants with biofuels. See, the only scalable options are synthetic fuels, where you can harvest a lot more energy from the same hectare of land, and therefore you will be able to power more ships from the same hectare of land. when you use wind and solar energy and then develop synthetic fuels from that, even though there are a lot of inefficiencies. You lose a lot of energy until you get to a chemical fuel, but still, take a look at the globe. We will not discover any more new continents. So we have to use the land which we have. And we know that already today there are huge competition about arable land. People that are hungry, people that need to be fed, especially in the current situation with Russia's war on Ukraine, where everyone is fearing a global food crisis, especially for the global south. We should make sure that we reserve those areas where you can grow food to food instead of putting it into ships boils. I think that the industry needs this investment certainty, and therefore it's so important that we set these ambitious targets for 2030, because if you know, in 2030, I will have to fulfill a sub-quota for synthetic fuel. So I better start searching now. I better will look for an investor now who says, okay, I'll be ready to supply you with these fuels. And we should not only think about the decarbonization as such, we should also think of the implications. I mean, Maya has said it all. Oceans are supplying us with oxygen. Oceans are supplying us with food. And all this is endangered the more our oceans heat up. So acting on climate is not only something that is relevant for future generations, it's relevant for us today. It's relevant for the millions of people who depend on seafood, for the millions of people who depend on having access to global transport via the oceans, which will become increasingly different with increasingly more extreme weather events. So last but not least, I know that there is a lot of thought about LNG being a transitional fuel. Even before the war, which brought forward really second thoughts in some people as to how reliable the Russian deliveries are, and we see right now they are not. We shouldn't forget that exchanging one fossil fuel with another fossil fuel is basically wasted money, because in a completely climate neutral world, LNG will not be able to play a role. Therefore, you would have to do a second investment in maybe 20 years' time, because the ship that is brought to the sea today will probably be still there in 2050. And LNG has an additional factor besides being a fossil fuel. We have unavoidable methane emissions in the engine, during tankering, all along the value chain. And methane is a much more powerful greenhouse gas than CO2. Regardless whether it's fossil or biomethane, of course, because it's a physical element of the molecule. So let's not waste our money in false greenwashed solutions, which will not bring us towards our goal of fully decarbonized maritime sector. I'm happy to see that there are so many people working on this right now, so many dedicated people giving their heart's blood to find better solutions. And I wish you all very fruitful discussions today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jutta, for your very inspiring and concrete words. We were expecting a keynote speech from you, and there were a lot of key messages in your addressing.
I think we move now on, after this initial very indeed inspiring talks, to the discussion, to the panel discussion, and I would like to thank in advance the panelists and that have made the time to be here with us today. And they represent on the user side maritime authorities, and on the, let's say, industrial sides leaders of consortia that are engaged in developing innovation, in developing solutions for the green transformation at sea. So I'm very keen to hear their perspective here, and I suggest we start. So I let Manuela introduce the first speaker.
Yes. We start from Sophie Dorothée Duron. Sophie is here because she has years of experience as a civil servant in maritime affairs, and currently she's the head of Maritime and Coastal Areas Department, Direction Générale des Affaires Maritimes, Secrétariat d'État de la Mer in France. Sophie, from the perspective of a maritime authority, what is your point of view about the SDG 14? What priorities? What should be done now? Thank you.
Thank you, Manuela. And first of all, thank you to EMSA and to ESA for this side event, because I think it's very interesting to have a cross-cutting discussion about spatial maritime issues, but also on technology and government point of view. So thank you for this opportunity. I think regarding the objective of the SDG 14 is a very good topic this week, especially in Lisbon. And as a government point of view, of course, the only thing I have to say that we have to act now urgently and work globally to maintain ocean, to tackle ocean vulnerability, and also to support resilient economy. And for that, we have to work with all different maritime sectors, for example, but also we have to work in a cooperation spirit with different states and act at international, regional, and of course national level. And you only can succeed if you work like that. And of course, shipping is a question because it's a part of the problem of the ocean protection. But we need shipping. Shipping is vital for us, for the world economy. So we have together to build that shipping could be a part of the solution to make it better. And the two maybe way France support, but not only France, is that we have to work on both sides. The first side is work on a strategic and integrated strategy. And for example, work on marine spatial planning or marine strategic planning in order to have a very large perspective and work on all the different subjects. That's what the European Commission, of course, work on. And we also have to make bridges between economy, science, and environment policy. And the second part is how we have to deal especially with the sector of shipping. And I will maybe give you some example of which type of cooperation we can have. We have to work, of course, at the international level. And I would like to stress the work done at the IMO level, because they are both working on new policy. Like, of course, like Puta said, we can be very, very optimistic and say a few words about the historical decision to make last month to designate Mediterranean Sea at a SOx ECA area. Of course, regarding greenhouse gases, we need global regulation, and I think that the work done at the MEPC 78 on the development of a new package of measures to combine technical and greenhouse gas pricing element for international shipping is very relevant. And of course, France, we support such initiative as an initiative to improve international objective for climate. But we also have, of course, to work on the regional level, and that's what we try to do with our European colleagues during the French presidency. And for example, to support the inclusion of maritime transport in the European carbon market and the development of fuels carbon intensity mandatory standards. We also support the European Commission in the draft of revision of the directive on ship source pollution and the introduction of penalties for the event of infringement. And at least, of course, we have to work on a national level. And for example, we try to make roadmap with the fishing industry in order to coordinate both government and private sector to have industrial strategy, investment, and also green corridors or more innovative models. And at least we support also voluntary engagement as we had during the One Ocean Summit in Brest. Because many ship owners decided to join the Green Marine European label to promote and more to promote initiative larger than the regulation we have. So that's all the type of investment I think we should pursue in order to meet SDG 14.
Thank you. Thank you for this comprehensive overview. And we would like now to move to Marte, our next panelist. So Marte Elliksen Tilzum is the Director of Sustainability at Kongsberg. So I think it would be very interesting if you could provide us a perspective of how innovation and how space technology could support the maritime sustainability and your green shipping strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's an honor to be here. My name is, as you said, Marte Ellingsen Tyldum, and I work in Kongsberg Maritime as Sustainability Director. But in Kongsberg, we're a wide group, so just a couple of words about us. We were founded in 1814, and our 11,000 employees, I think we count now, are working everywhere from space to maritime, to defense, and to digital. So for having one green strategy for us, that's a massive challenge. But I think one of the core things that we say is that everything we want to work on should be approaching tomorrow's zero-emission society. And some of the main innovations that we've done throughout the last years is, of course, one is the Yara Birkeland, which is the first fully electric autonomous container feeder vessel. She's now sailing, and we're immensely proud of that vessel. And of course, connectivity would be core of the development for that vessel moving forward. We've also verified one of the first hydrogen propulsion systems and making sure that we can prove that this works as a full-scale pilot. So in our business strategy, we always say we will not do anything unless it is approaching the zero emission of tomorrow. But I just reflected walking over here that there is something else that we've heard quite a lot in the last couple of days of this conference. I've been so lucky as to be here for a couple of days now, also being part of the Innovaton with the youth before the opening of the conference. And one thing that many speak about is that, yes, we should approach the zero emission, but we should equally approach the nature positive. And when I thought about what we do, especially within space, I think nature positive is one of the core things that we work on. So that's what I will spend my golden 3 minutes on to elaborate on. So nature for us, it relies, of course, on our infrastructure. There is a lot of infrastructure that we as humans have placed in nature. what we need to do is, of course, to secure this infrastructure, but even more, when we fail, we need to clean up. So in Kongsberg, we started in 1992, developing these services to detect oil on the ocean surface. It was done together with the Norwegian Defence Research Institute and the Coastal Administration. But since 2007, this has been incorporated in the EMSA Clean Sea Net, and I'm really proud that we can do this across Europe. So with the upcoming rapid infrastructure development, with the spatial plannings that we talk about, with the coexistence, continuing these extraordinary important collaborations will be core to us in Kongsberg. And I think we should also look if there are other data sources, more rich data that we should use moving forward in the same collaborations. So on other things, nature positive, another crucial aspect is food security. It was mentioned earlier, but I have to mention it again. Illegal fishing is a massive threat. It is a massive threat to our food security. And in Kongsberg Maritime, we have developed world-leading solutions for fisheries. I've worked on some of those projects. They're amazing. We can fish extraordinarily sustainable. But that does not matter at all if there are no fish to fish. So working together in solutions to monitor and find illegal fishing is crucial, and maybe even more important than making hydrogen fishing vessels. So how do we do that? Of course, we are really proud again to have worked with EMSA with the detections, and of course then that data being delivered to the European Fisheries Control Agency. Keep up the good work is what I will say there. But equally so, what we've also done is that we worked with the Global Fishing Watch, and we've worked with others in combining different data sources again, using satellite technology, but also using image detection and giving that information to local authorities, making sure that local authorities can patrol when they can, and can go out and detect and do something with illegal fishing. It's one of the projects that I'm the most proud of that we do. And we had a cooperation with Sea Shepherd on this, just giving the same information, and we saw that it worked. In the areas where satellite information was provided, where image detection was used, and Sea Shepherd could patrol, illegal fishing disappeared. So it works. We can do something here. And I was given 3 minutes, so I will soon round up. But some of the important things that we talk about here is, of course, also to make sure that sustainability and all of these nice things that we talk about is not just for the rich people up here in the western part of Europe. Illegal fishing, nature positive, is equally so for the entire populations of the world. So let's make sure that we also think about these collaboration projects and leave no one behind, and do this in a just transition way. So I could speak for hours. I will not. But one of the important things that I want to mention is that the two examples mentioned, they build on the same type of technology. Satellite technology has really developed, and we can use the same ideas across many sectors. We use the same on deforestation. We can use the same on plastic pollution. It is massive, the amount of opportunities that's out there. And the core things that we need is big and wide programs with several nations, several partners, and opening this data, sharing it together, and events like today. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think now we move from these very interesting reflections about the ocean and the nature positive, and we zoom in on some regional experiences, also related to the ports. Also, I think, again, the topic of how we replicate it, how we do bigger projects with wider ambitions is always very relevant. And I would like then to introduce you to Thierry Dusselier, who is a Senior Business Development Executive at Sinai. And I would like, if possible, if you could introduce us to the digital port platform project that you are developing, and how this integration of technology, satellite connectivity, Earth observation, data analytics, AI can support the green transition in ports. Thank you.
Check. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Thierry Dusselier. I'm the head of sales of Cine, a company specialized in the digitalization of the maritime industry. I'm very pleased to be here, not only for this great event, but because I'm also a big fan of ocean and space. This has been said in the introduction, and I completely agree. When we think about it, they are very similar, very hostile, unexplored, filled with myth and legends, and source of great promises. So it's very cool to work with both sides. So thank you, ESA and EMSA, for giving us the opportunity to introduce us and to give you an overview of our solutions for ports. At Cine, we have built, going to be a bit technical there, a virtual cloud-based storage on which we gather and transform data coming from the oceans and maritime actors, thanks to advanced AI tech, and I'm going to stop that for the technical part. With the help of the European Space Agency, we are adding now new sources of information, since we can now exploit space assets, such as SAT-EO or SATCOM, to develop real-time and predictive solutions for the port ecosystem. This is what we call the digital port platform, a hub of maritime application that helps ports being more competitive and mainly more sustainable. This platform combines a logistics module, helping, among others, to reduce port congestion, and an environmental module that controls and prevents pollution that is due to the different activities in and outside the port. We are talking about business intelligence tools that help stakeholders taking the right decision at the right time. A few examples. The port of Port-la-Nouvelle in south of France has been using this technology to prevent water pollution by predicting the turbidity of the water 48 hours in advance. This was actually a project we've built in partnership also with our friends at a company called IC. We also can now predict the time of arrival of the vessels in port waiting zone. We have worked with AROPA, and especially the Harbour Master Office of the Port of Le Havre, to provide them with a dedicated interface monitoring their different calls in real time. And there's a lot more to do. So thanks again to everyone, including ESA and also the CNES in France, who are working with us on this journey, helping us protecting our planet by organizing the most epic and coolest wedding ever, the one between the ocean and space. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I would like to move and introduce you to Professor Alan Wells from Leicester, who will present another project related to port, Cash 22, that, let's say, focuses on several aspects of sustainability at ports, from emission reduction, air quality, energy efficiency. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm a emeritus professor in space technology, with having had a long career in space. And in recent times, I've moved my activities into the area of air pollution and other emissions, and become involved almost peripherally in the maritime sector. Initially, we had the idea that if we could quantify the emissions using space data, we could then begin to address questions of the extent to which maritime operations were contributing significantly and quantitatively to GHG emissions and air pollution emissions. And in some early work that we did in a collaboration with Belfast Harbour, we undertook a survey of the operations in the port of Belfast in terms of their CO2 and nitrogen dioxide emissions. And this paved the way to be able to present to the European Space Agency a proposal to their Ports of the Future program in terms of developing a process for monitoring and then providing data for ports and harbours to be able to develop their programs and strategies for mitigation of those emissions. We called the project Clean Air, Clean Harbour Energy, and 22 was the year we wanted to deliver that project. We've now completed that feasibility study, and I think we are on a good track. We already have a number of early adopters of the process in asking us to provide them with the best information we can on the emission profiles of their operations. One is a shipping company that operates between the mainland England and Northern Ireland. The other is a port that is preparing plans for funding for onshore power and decarbonisation measures for that port. And the analytics that we've developed through this process, we've been asked to use those to support bids to funding to the UK funding agency in support of that program. So I think we have already got a small foothold in this activity. I'm one of 3 SMEs in the consortium that is developing this service, and as I say, we are already engaged with some early adopters in this program. It goes beyond the monitoring of port shipping operations in the sense that many ports are urban ports in which there is a very close economic connection between the port operations and the city and local authority agencies. And there have been disputes in the past as to whether air pollution from shipping is a major contribution to the air pollution of the local authority. We've been asked to look into that, and in one example, and I won't provide any names, the common view that cruise ships were contributing significantly to air pollution in the city could not be justified when we looked at the data. As far as this process is concerned, space technology and space data and services is absolutely central. And as my colleague has already said, this is one of a number of data sources that come together in a very large integrated data system when you want to really try and understand these processes. So we are engaged with modelers that bring in both the road traffic emissions, the shipping emissions, the operation of portside equipment in an integrated process to quantify the emission and to look at the distribution of those emissions. So again, we're using Copernicus data in the modeling along with meteorological data, which gives you the dispersion and the distribution of air pollution from both the terrestrial and maritime sources. So I'll leave it at that. As I say, we are in an early stage in this process. There is interest in the industry in the maritime industry in the processes that we're using. And we're very optimistic that we can take this forward.
Thank you. And after this, let's say, several interventions around how data could support these ports, platforms, and the reduction of emissions, I would like now to change and hear from Professor Pagano, who is the director of J-Labs Ports in CNIT, who stands for Consorzio Nazionale Interuniversitario per le Telecomunicazioni, of the project that he is leading, the 5G MAS, where satellite connectivity is instrumental to, let's say, reduce the inefficiency of arrival of ships at ports to support the autonomous shipping integration at ports. So it's a different, let's say, aspects related to the green transition at sea. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rita, for the nice introduction. Yes, I lead a laboratory that is located in a port, actually a very old port. It was founded in the 16th actually century. So there is no lack of continuity between the port and the urban settlement, with all what is related in terms of sustainable growth. I scientifically lead this project funded by ESA. It's a 2-year project that is twinning 5G and space technologies to enable maritime autonomous surface shipping. That is the IMO term to speak about uncrewed ships. So actually we will set up 26 gigahertz non-public network in the port settlement, and we'll establish low latency and broadband communication with the ship, sharing data. The gap analysis, if you will actually address the topic of autonomous shipping, says there is a lot of data, but in non-compatible, non-interoperable systems. So there are data that are relying on a ship and data that are relying on a port information system. We share them. And this is very useful when you want to enable, for instance, maneuvering. To maneuver a ship, like the ones we will operate in Livorno, you need real-time information, and you need to say prompt action on the wheel and the engines. We will set up a prototype of a shore control center in our laboratory, because from level 3 of mass ships, there will be no captain, actually. So the ship will be remotely controlled. And we will show that this is doable. We will do a long-lasting trial, starting with traditional ships. That's not a choice of us, because actually IMO has said that the new mass code, upcoming mass code, will be tackling with all ships, not only tugboats or small yacht, but all kind of ships, and all geographical regions and all operations. So we start with the worst case of a traditional ro-ro ship, very big ship. And about sustainability, because this is very technical. So you make use of 5G, broadband communication, seems nothing to share with the environment. That's not the case. Because ships, they they stop just in front of the port for a lot of time. So they are out of the port bay and stay there at anchor for even days. And so they waste fuel, they waste working hours. So if you manage and this is envisioned in the so-called e-navigation, in IMO jargon, to effectively manage the arrival of the ship, the maneuvering of the ship. Then in the end, you have less fuel consumption, lower footprint in carbon dioxide, and also reduction of working hours for seafarers.
Thank you. Thank you for these considerations. And I would like then to move on to Christina Oiseter. You will pronounce it correctly. Head of Innovation at StormGeo, will present us how we need probably integrated solution, making use of a lot of different type of technologies and data. So weather monitoring, satellite AIS, these are all optimized vessel routing, how all these together can support reduction of pollution at sea. Please.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me. That was a broad question, so I'll see if I manage to answer that. Just first and foremost, I'm not sure if you know StormGeo. We are a tech company enabled by industry experts. Our biggest vertical is the shipping industry, where we provide decision support and services and tools to actually reduce fuel emissions and help ship companies comply with regulations. That's what we do on a daily basis. We process approximately 20 terabytes of data daily, and that is data input given by third parties, noon reports, satellite data, AIS data, you name it. We use our industry experts with industry and domain competence to actually analyze and give the best possible insight and decision-making support to the industry. And going back to what we discussed, and we've been talking a lot about long-term needs, long-term projects and things that need to get in place, but I think it's also important to think about what can we do here and now. What can we start doing today? We cannot put all eggs in one basket and only focus on the long term, such as retrofit or new builds or alternative fuels, which have some availability and price challenges. And coming back to your question about how we use satellite and weather data and weather routing to reduce emissions. I mean, weather routing is our core business. We route approximately 70,000 voyages on a yearly basis, so that gives us a very good database. We see that, and of course, then we use the weather data and the weather insight, and we see that by using the weather to our benefit and not moving against the weather, you can save approximately 2 to 4% on each voyage. That's a massive amount. And just by example, I have 2 examples with me. Last year, we routed a voyage from Canada to Germany, and someone needs to do the math. I cannot do that, but the vessel saved approximately $62,000 in fuel. And he even took a longer route, but because we avoided currents and we avoided waves and wind. So that is for sure how we also use space data. And when it comes to fleet performance management, which is also a big part of our business, we collect voyage and vessel data, and we translate that into environmental performance improvement measures. So it's also about taking all this data that we get, using our experts to analyze it, and then giving it back as an advice to what you can do to improve your, today, I'm sure you all know about the CII, for example, how we can use that to reduce the emissions. And then I don't remember the second half of your question.
We keep the rest for the panel discussion, and perhaps Manuela would like to introduce our last.
Yes, thank you very much, Christina. Actually, it's quite impressive to see how data can support clever decision making, also for greener operations and greener shipping, and more efficient at the end. So our last panelist is Pierluigi Milella. He's here in representation of the Italian Coast Guard. The Italian Coast Guard is an operational body, very much on the barricades. It's a news of last week that they signed also a memorandum of understanding with ESA, so they are very much engaged in innovation and technology. Pierluigi, provide your perspective where innovation and technology can help an operational maritime administration.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation, because give me the opportunity to share with all of you the activity that the Italian government put in place to be a part of this deal, I would say the Green Deal, that involved all of us. In the field of maritime decarbonization, the Italian government actively supports the EU efforts on development of Fit for 55 package, and in order to achieve the goals contained in the European Green Deal. In this context, Italy developed a national report starting from a couple of years, but this last national report is very important, containing the policy to be applied in the negotiation established at EU and IMO level. About the maritime transport, we put in place two main levels of improvement. A first level is a level of promotion, the development of new technologies. In fact, Italy supports projects through which the new green technology, for instance, wind, fuel cell, are used in order to gain experience and knowledge and to facilitate the application of this on global scale in the future. And also, we try to promote the electrification of the port, for instance. The Ministry of Sustainable Infrastructure and Mobility, in which the Coast Guard is a part of this ministry, in 2021 signed a decree in which are established measures for electrification of the ports, called ironing, with the aims to give as much as possible and feasible the possibility to the vessel to be connected to the shore electricity grid while moored at the quayside. Furthermore, hybrid electrical vessel. Italy supports, in fact, a project related to development electrical vessel and related rechargeable port infrastructures in order to promote the build a local network of transport using such green technology in a short route. And more, development on research studies on the green technologies and fuels. In this specific sector, the Italian government promotes research and studies for development of the green technology. In particular, in this field, the administration is involved in a project named ZEUS, Zero Emission Ultimate Ship. And the vessel is an experimental fuel cell powered marine vessel. And it's the results of the research activity aimed at improving the level of environmental sustainability of the cruise ship, mega yachts, ferries, oceanographic research vessel by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, nitrogen oxides, sulfur oxides, and particulate. And finally, I will particularly proud of the very remarkable results that last week that Ms. Elodie Viau mentioned before. We developed protocols and a memorandum of intent with main international and EU agency. In this specific case, the Italian Coast Guard headquarters has initiated a collaborative activity with the European Space Agency to leverage the use of space application aimed at the promotion of sustainable innovation for the benefit of maritime ecosystem and in transport. And this collaboration has resulted at initial stage in a form of cooperation and support for development on the project of 5G MAS, hosting in Legor Port. This project is a part of a border program of technological development aimed to the digitalization and automation of ports and the interface between all port actors and the ship environment in order to facilitate the automatic exchange in information regarding the safety of navigation, but not also. So this is the general view of the activity of the Italian government to try to put in place in order to reach the aim established by EU and IMO level.
Thank you. Thank you for this overview. I would like then, after hearing all these different perspectives that I think are also a testimony of how big is the ambition, how many different angles are related to the green transition at sea. I would like to start the panel discussion and give the floor to the audience if anybody has any questions that we would like to make to the panelists. If not, I would like to start with the first question. We heard about sustainability of maritime transport, decarbonization, which is not the only challenge, is also light at sea. We heard about the natural positive concept. So I would now, I'm from the European Space Agency. Our mandate is to support companies in developing innovation that address those needs. So what would be your advice? What, in your view, what are the main barriers? What are the main challenges? And how could we, let's say, what are the key enablers so that innovation is really purposeful and addresses these key challenges? If anybody would like to start, please.
Okay. Just maybe share the two main subjects when we talk about technology and the ability to better detect through the development of a new payload, making progress in the detection of weak signals and also identification of abnormal or illegal behavior. I think we need such tool, first of all, and the second important thing is the optimization of the use of the data, which is therefore increasingly numerous and varied. This leads to considering optimized operating systems that are interoperable between administration and state and also industry or public agency. So that's why I very thank ESA and EMSA to this panel, because we need tools. We need innovative tools to combine spatial and maritime information in order to have sensors that help us. And in terms of sensor, I work more with EMSA for the moment. I would like to thank the offer and the innovative tools you promote in the European water, for example, by the improving of the Earth observation programs like CleanSeaNet and Copernicus, and also the operational program of drones that we can combine the two different of sensor and tools. France, of course, is convinced of the benefits of the two innovative capacity. And in terms of data, of course, we support close relation with EMSA because we need the more data we have in order to have the better picture of the maritime situation. So maybe that's one of the concern I can share with you.
Yeah, thank you. You asked, how to innovate better using space technology, and I think it's very important also how we work. It's a fairly conservative industry, and I believe strongly that we need to, and today many of the smaller startups, smaller and medium-sized startups are accelerating faster and working faster. So I'm a big promoter of working together, larger companies or corporations together with smaller startups in order to actually accelerate our agility in order to deliver. And we have so much to learn from them because they can work at a different speed that we can at larger consortiums and larger companies. I also want to stress what I said earlier, that we cannot just sit and wait. We need to have in the industry a sort of learn and fail culture where we actually dare to get started with initiatives even though there is some insecurity, because we're not sure what is coming in 10 years' time. So we need to start working on smaller projects that could take us further ahead. And so looking at both incremental innovations, so what we can do today, and together with explorative innovations, so what's going to bring us there in the future.
Very much, because indeed I think you bring a very important point that is related to the cooperation, to the creation of an ecosystem to federate needs of the users and link them with the, let's say, with the solutions, as well as the need to, let's say, to plan for innovation in order that we arrive at a point where this innovation becomes sustainable and that is really used and operated. So I think for very, very, very good point. Is there somebody else, please, that...
I stole that one, didn't I? Yeah, just following on to that one, I think collaboration is crucial, but also to be a bit wise when you and we set together different projects that they're wide enough. So if you think for Maritime, for instance, that we add on ports, that we add on infrastructure, and that we add on policies in the same program. Because this type of innovation can be quite siloed, and as a technology firm we would say, technology is ready, we just need to scale it up and get it out there, and then we need these wider programs with all of the players that are here today.
Also, that is exactly the point, that we move out of the pilot phase and we move towards the implementation phase. Most of you said here and now, so there is really the way that technology can fit in this picture and become really an operational tool. Alan, please.
To add to that, I think the point was made that we really need to move into demonstration of these innovations in real world environments, and in our case we are just beginning to do that and really beginning to find the difficulties in doing that. And the difficulties are that in the industrial sector they have a business to run on a day-by-day basis. They have obligations to meet new green targets, and they don't necessarily have the systems expertise to bring those changes into their day-to-day operations. So that's some of my experience in that. And I think the barrier is around data. There is huge quantities of data that you can use to demonstrate different features of operations, in our case ports and harbours. But one needs also to be able to turn that data into information on which decisions can be made. And I think that's a pathway that we're on. We're trying to do it. And it is a real pleasure by the way, to be here in EMSA, because I'm aware of, as Madame Jutta said, of the importance of the MRV program that you run. There's a huge amount of data in what you already publish, but I'm sure that there are layers beyond that, beneath that, which would be immensely valuable in the kind of systems optimization that we are trying to do by integrating space data with in situ data, using historical data as a basis for forecasting growth, forecasting change. So I really would like to hear from EMSA on that data question, whether there are any synergies that we can develop with space data.
Thank you. And real world, so we need the real world. Pierluigi, you wanted the floor.
Let me give you a different point of view of this specific aspect from the perspective of an administration. What does challenge mean for an administration? I think that the key word in this perspective is facilitation, is to facilitate the activity between the industry and the final users, the industries and the owners, the industries and the ship owners. I believe that the role of the administration in this specific scenario is to give an acceleration to implement of the innovation, of the sustainable technologies in a legal framework that we are going to create starting from the last 5 years, giving a specific indication on how to improve, how to, in a certain point of view, enforce a specific term of reference of this framework. But mainly the role of the administration currently, because we don't have so much time, we have to hurry, is to put in contact the industry and the startups and what else to the end user. And I consider end user owners, ship owners, port operators, and what else. This is, in my opinion, a fundamental role for the administration at the EU level.
Thank you. Then I would like, if there are no further... there is a question. 2 questions. Okay. Do we have a microphone? Yes. If you could shortly introduce you and make the question.
Yeah, I'm Giovanni Coppini. I come from Italy, the Euro-Mediterranean Center on Climate Change, and I work in Copernicus Marine Service. The question is a follow-up to the Professor Wells' comment on the, let's say, open data policy. I think Copernicus, ESA, and also EMSA, we are distributing a lot of data, which then allow industry like StormGeo to build. But we can do more. I think Professor was very right. We can do more. For instance, we are not even able to, we work on ship routing, and we are not able to really validate our system because all the traffic data are really hard to access. I mean, you have to pay to do that. So the question is, how do you think we can evolve in the open data policy in the maritime sectors? For instance, the previous accident that occurred would be very important for us that we work in oil spill pollution to reconstruct accidents and understand why they happen, because we know which were the weather and marine conditions there, but then we lack of data in this sense. Thank you.
Who would like to take this question? Big question. Please, Paul.
Very difficult question. Of course, there are data sets that are eligible to be open So meteo marine conditions, for instance, must be open. I think, on my own perspective, the data must be trustworthy. There is a lot of data, as you said. Sometimes we have the active pilots, they don't believe in data. So we need certified data sets, and those can be open. On the other hand, there are data that cannot be shared so easily. Think of maneuvering. If any accident takes place, you understand that the Coast Guard needs to confine this data. So I think open data is a very good perspective for certain kind of data, like meteo marine, as I said, but also the usual pile-up of trucks, where the inefficiency can be localized and mitigated. This is very interesting. On some other sources must be restricted. As you said, as I mentioned in the beginning, our 5G network at Port of Livorno will be a non-public network for security issues. So imagine if there is a malware that is changing the readings of the sensors, so the wave sensor in the port basin, so that maneuvering of an autonomous ship is then affected by this malware. So we need to prevent it, of course. But some other sources can be fully open. I don't know whether I answered. It was very difficult as question.
Thank you, and I think, of course, it can be continued after the discussion after. I think there was a second question. Yes, please.
Hello, good afternoon to everybody. Felipe from Portugal. My question is more or less in the following of the previous question, but a little bit more on the practical side, and obviously it's transversal to all the panel, which I would like to thank for their participation and for their feedback. The first point that we have, and it's a shame that we don't have a ship operator in the panel, because at the end of the day, they will be the ones implementing all these strategies and so on. But from the data sharing point of view, we know, because at least us from the administration side, we know that the CII, the carbon intensity, we had two different paths to follow. One was an estimated AER, and the other one was the EEOI. From that point of view, do you believe in such a competitive industry that there will be opening from the operator's side to share the data and to really define measures based on real data? And additionally, how the companies that are dealing with the data can grant to the ship owners that their data will not be shared, because we are in one of the most competitive industries. We know how the market is nowadays, especially on the container market, and the big difference that the access to data can do from one company to the other.
Thank you for the question. I would invite a short answer.
Well targeted. I'm not sure I can answer all parts of your question, not being super technical, but we offer CII simulations today to ship operators, and we just launched that last month, May. It has actually turned out to be an immensely success, and many ship operators have come on board already because they're interested in seeing what their rating are today. And also, we use the data input that we get from the ships, and we look at the rating, and then we use this data to say, okay, if you get a C or a D or E rating, and you need to step it up. We also provide, let's say, a recipe of what you need to do in the coming years in order to level up. So But then about the open data, I cannot answer how open they will be to share that data, but I think and that's the second point that we haven't discussed that much today, is nothing will change unless we get rules and regulations in place, because this is about change management, and very few people, change and have large investments without this being regulated. So I think as soon as CII becomes regulated in January next year, I think that they have no choice whether to let's say comply or not, and if that data will be shared, that I'm not entitled of answering. Sorry.
Thank you. Last question, then you will have the possibility to interact with our panelists during the networking cocktail. So last question, please.
Thank you. I'm Elizabeth Holland. I'm professor of ocean and climate change at the University of the South Pacific with 12 member states of the Pacific Islands. And I'm also on the joint group of experts on scientific aspects of marine environmental protection. And I give you that background to provide some context for the brainstorming question that I will ask, because I'm very inspired, challenged, and hopeful by the discussions that I've heard today. That's appropriately Eurocentric. But can some of the remote sensing technologies, for example, be used to provide opportunities for development cooperation? And my specific brainstorming dream is that, for example, tracking pollution gives us the opportunity to create a carbon tax that can be reinvested in sustainable transport in the Pacific. And it might even, getting to specifics, as was required by the open data question and the competitive questions that we just heard, could we potentially start with the Marshall Islands Registry and their very important push in the IMO for decarbonization? And that some of that data sharing might be a think tank that's associated with the Marshall Islands Registry. And here, I'm just brainstorming. But given where I come from, we need solutions quickly. We need solutions for Europe, for ocean travel in general. But for the existential threats that we're facing, we need solutions for us. So, there.
Thank you very much for your contribution to Brainstorm.
We can try to wrap up at least the session now, although I think we will continue also thanks of the inputs from the audience and what we heard during the networking cocktail afterwards. But so I would like to thank you now. And before coming to a closure, I would like to give the floor back to Elodie and Maya for the closing remarks, starting with Elodie, please. I think she's first.
Not twice the same mistake. So thank you. I am very pleased to have heard from the panelists the several challenges that was highlighted, but also a number of sectors. We heard about the decarbonization, but not only, but the greenhouse gas emissions reduction, the air pollution, the sustainability, but also the efficiency in port and across the various domains. So we heard a lot of many solutions, so that gives us a very positive mindset that there is things to be done, even if we have heard that it has to be done now. So I think many of you are insisted on the importance of doing it now. So we are looking for those solutions that are already developed to amplify them and reuse them because we have many countries here present. So we see that it's also all across Europe that there is action ongoing. So it gives me bringing back to the importance of being together. We have heard from you that you are importance of getting together to share those actions, so really to collaborate across the various sectors. To have a large project, I heard a larger European project, so we will have this ambition with EMSA to propose that to our member states, in also to have the impulse of the public sectors, because it is our role to find investment from the public sector together with the private sectors in order to be achieving more together, and also to go from demonstration in the real world. So that's what we have heard, and that's what might take away from this panelist, is to really having a look at how to bring those large projects to maturation between ESA and EMSA in order to, as a public entity, being able to support the private initiatives that are created across Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elodie. And now it's the turn of Maya.
My turn. Oh, it's really not easy to wrap up, or let's say to provide the conclusion of such an interesting discussion. So I will start by thanking our panelists, which worked in almost perfect gender balance capacity. So that contributes certainly to the quality of our discussion. We have again learned a lot. We have heard about the projects that are ongoing, and that was the inspiration for the future cooperation. I also thank the colleagues who contribute to the discussion with their questions and remarks. So I will not really wrap up, but rather underline some elements which I found very important and interesting. First of all, we have endorsed, it has been endorsed, that shipping is absolutely very important for global economy and all our societies. Being a global industry, it certainly needs a global framework to operate. That brings us to the potential to increase the cooperation and to see for the synergies and partnerships in the global context. We believe in Europe that is exactly what we are doing by our cooperative approach in the IMO and in other international bodies, searching for partnership on the global level for the solutions. So this is one aspect. But the other, of course, is how we will bring the new great technology closer to the implementation phase. We have heard here a couple of times shipping sector or shipping industry is kind of conservative industry. Well, I would tend, with my almost 30 years working in maritime or shipping closed sector, I would tend to say, no, it's a conscious industry and it is a responsible industry. It is the industry that needs to deliver. And in order to be able to deliver and to be sure that it could deliver, it has to work together and in very close cooperation with those who are developing new solutions. So this should create, let's say, a synergies which could bring us, of course, faster forward, because then the developments will not serve themselves, but it will serve the implementation of the sector. There are great examples where newcomers went really fast. The third part of this angle is certainly the policymakers and the legislators. We need a global framework for the new environment. Example of MAS that has been presented by our colleague, the concrete, let's say the concrete projects. On the other hand side, we have witnessed still a lack of the firm legislative framework from us. We from EMSA side, we are trying to fill that gaps by developing appropriate guidances to enable the trials. But we also have to make sure that the policymakers has to make sure that the newcomers are not going to be punished for their pioneering work. that we are not going to change our mind somewhere in the middle of the path. Sometimes it happens. So we have to make sure that there is some sort of certainty when we are expecting the large investments. And of course, I always mention that we also need to think about financing, because financial sector, financial industry needs to be on board, needs to be the part of the responsible cooperation triangle. Not only the public funding, which, let's say, we are going to ensure and we are hoping to ensure through either recovery funds or even better the development funds that will derive from the market-based instruments, but also the private financial sector, which needs to be on board if we want to really accelerate the changes in the sector. Open data, not open data. This is something that we are discussing here in EMSA very extensively. Information is commodity today. We all know that. We are working in we are living in the world where information is the commodity, I would say. For example, we like to think about ourselves in EMSA as digital, modern, pioneering organizations. We are gathering on the daily basis millions of information. Colleagues always tell me this figure of 40 million messages which we are receiving only from the satellite AIS daily. So what is important here is that, first of all, you have the mechanism to derive what is important, what is the relevant information which needs to be shared. For that, you need something like machine learning, artificial intelligence, so that you can really process it and use it for the future decision-making processes, but also to see how we can share this information in a meaningful way with our stakeholders and with the wider community. We, in-house, we are cherishing the open data policy as much as we can, but very often we are not the owners of the data, and this is where we find our limits. So let's say in creating open or closed data policy, we have to be all on board, primarily the owners of the information, usually the member states, or even the ship owners when it comes to the commercially sensitive information. I will take out the security-related information. They will always stay and should stay in the protective zone. But even when we talk about the cybersecurity threats, one of the main issues is, are we sharing information enough? We should share it more to build our robustness to protect our system. So there should be the balance, but all in all, I believe that the open policy nowadays is something that will build new knowledge and, let's say, also contribute to the development in the future. We didn't talk today much, but I think it is very relevant to mention it at the end. People. People are the heart of any industry, any sector. When we are talking about the transformation and the use of technology for maritime transport sector, both in port sector or in shipping, or for the administration, we need to inject new knowledge in our education system so that new generation will be able to embrace the technology we are talking about today. So this is one aspect we should always also take into the consideration. I'm not sure how this was the wrap-up, but it was certainly the contribution and the thoughts from EMSA or EMSA Executive Director point of view. I'm looking forward to the new cooperation. I'm looking forward to work with ESA, as I said at the beginning. We have lots of potentials. We love to be pioneers. We proved that with our drone activities, which I didn't talk about today, but from the very first steps to the main provider of ARPA services today in civilian environment in Europe, we proved that we can embrace the new ideas and new technologies. Looking forward to work with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to all panelists, to Maya and Elodie, for their vision and their sharing in a forward-looking way. Thank you to all of you, the ones that are in the room and the ones that are following us remotely. Protecting our oceans is a shared responsibility, so there is work for all of us. As EMSA and ESA, we are here to help, to act as facilitators, enablers, and accelerators, so you know that you can count on us. Thank you again.